So today, this is what I have presented. We're going to finish up the section of Narada visiting all the palaces of Krishna, and we're going to see how Krishna would act in Dwaraka. And then, since next week we have several holy days, I'm going to do a special addendum class on Damodar Lila and Govardhan Lila. And we will also sing the Damodar Ashtakam prayers. So let's get started. So last week, we studied a chapter entitled So Hum, which was how Krishna would wake up in the morning, hours before, 1.5 hours before sunrise, Brahma Muhurta, even though he was embraced by so many goddesses of fortune, his wife, headed by Rukmini. But even though he was lying in bed, embraced by the goddess of fortune, upon hearing the sounds of the rooster, Krishna would rise from bed and begin his spiritual sadhana program. And it was mentioned how Krishna would meditate on himself. And Prabhupada went to great lengths explaining how Krishna had no choice but to meditate on himself, because meditation by definition means meditating on the absolute truth, either as impersonal Brahman, Paramatma Supersoul, or Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead. That's the absolute truth. And we are not to meditate on ourselves, because although we are part and parcel of the absolute truth, if we meditate on ourselves, that's not meditation on the absolute truth. Prabhupada even mentioned we should spend our mornings meditating on Radha Krishna. And that can easily be done when one chants the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And Prabhupada pointed out that we should not imitate Krishna by meditating on ourselves, but rather meditate on Radha and Krishna. But in Krishna's case, he had no other alternative, because by definition, meditation means meditation on the absolute truth, and Krishna is all three. So now we continue, and today's episode is entitled Lord Krishna's Daily Activities Continued. So after his meditation, Krishna would regularly bathe early in the morning with clear sanctified water. Then Krishna would change into fresh clothing, cover himself with a wrapper, and engage himself in his daily religious functions. Out of Krishna's many religious duties, the first was to offer oblations into the sacrificial fire and silently chant the Gayatri mantra. Since Lord Krishna was in the disciplic succession from Kanva Muni, Krishna offered oblations to the fire before sunrise. Then Krishna chanted the Gayatri mantra. As the ideal householder, Krishna executed all the religious functions of a Vedic householder without deviation. When the sunrise became visible, Krishna would offer specific prayers to the sun god. The sun god and other demigods mentioned in the Vedic scriptures are described as different limbs of the body of Lord Krishna. For those who follow strict Vedic principles, it is the duty of the householder to offer respects to the demigods and great sages, as well as to the forefathers. As it is said in Bhagavad Gita, Na me partasti kartavyam trishu lokeshu kinchana nana bhaptam avaptavyam varta eva cha karmani. Krishna has no specific duty to perform in this world, and yet Krishna acts just like an ordinary man living with an ideal life within this material world. So in accordance with the Vedic ritualistic principles, Krishna would offer respects to the demigods. The regulative principle by which the demigods and forefathers are worshipped is called tarpana. The word tarpana means pleasing, because one's forefathers may have to take a body on another planet, and by the performance of this tarpana system, those forefathers become very happy wherever they may be. So it is the duty of the householder to make his family members happy, and by following this tarpana system, one can make one's forefathers happy also. As the perfect exemplary householder, Lord Sri Krishna followed this tarpana system and offered respectful obeisances to the elderly, superior members of his family. Krishna's next duty was to give cows in charity to brahmanas. In fact, Lord Krishna used to give as many as 13,084 cows. Each of these cows was decorated with a silken cover and pearl necklace. The horns were covered with gold plating, and their hoofs were silver plated. All of the cows were full of milk due to having their firstborn calves with them, and they were very tame and peaceful. When the cows were given in charity to the brahmanas were also given nice silken garments, and each was given a deer skin and a sufficient quantity of sesame seeds. Krishna is generally known by the words Go Brahmana Hitaya Cha, which means Krishna's first duty is to see to the welfare of both the cows and the brahmanas. But actually, Krishna's first duty is to protect and give welfare to the cows, then the brahmanas. Thus, Krishna used to give cows in charity to the Brahmins with opulent decorations and paraphernalia. Then, wishing for the welfare of all living entities, Krishna would touch auspicious articles such as milk, honey, ghee or clarified butter, gold, jewels, and fire. Although Krishna is by nature very beautiful, due to the perfect figure of his transcendental body, Krishna would dress himself in yellow garments and put on his necklace of Kaustuba jewels. Krishna would wear flower garlands smeared with his body with the pulp of sandalwood, and Krishna would decorate himself with similar cosmetic and ornaments. It is thus said in Srimad Bhagavatam, in a conversation between Vidura and Uddhava, when Uddhava began his description of the pastimes of Sri Krishna in his original form, exhibited by Yoga Maya, this verse appears. Yan martya lilaw payikang svayoga, maya balang darshayata grihitam, vismapanang svasya cha sabagardehe, parang padang bhushanangam. To exhibit the strength of his own spiritual potency, Lord Krishna manifested a form just suitable for his pastimes in this material world. This form was wonderful even for Krishna, and it was the supreme abode of the wealth of good fortune. The limbs of this wonderful form were so beautiful that it increased the beauty of the ornaments worn on different parts of Krishna's body. So the ornaments themselves became beautiful upon being placed on the transcendental body of Krishna. After decorating himself in this way, Krishna would then look at marble statues of the cow and calf, and Krishna would visit temples of God or demigods like Lord Shiva. There were many Brahmins who would come daily to see the Supreme Lord before taking their breakfast. They were anxious to see Krishna, and so Krishna welcomed them. Krishna's next duty was to please all kinds of men belonging to the different castes, both in the city and within the palace compound. Krishna made them happy by fulfilling their different desires. And when Krishna saw them happy, Krishna also became very much pleased. The flower garlands, betel nuts, sandalwood pulp, and other fragrant cosmetic articles offered to Krishna would then be distributed by Krishna, first to the Brahmins and elderly members of the family, then to his queens, then to the ministers, and if there were still some balance, Krishna would engage it for his own personal use. And by the time Krishna finished all these daily duties and activities, Krishna's chariot driver, Daruka, would come with his wonderful chariot and stand before Krishna with folded hands, intimating that Krishna's chariot was ready and that Krishna should come out of the palace to travel. Krishna's chariot driver would stand with joined palms, and Krishna, holding on to Daruka's joined palms with his right hand, would mount the chariot. Then Krishna, accompanied by Uddhava and Satyaki, would ride on the chariot just as the sun god rides on his chariot in the morning, appearing with his blazing rays on the surface of the world. When Krishna was about to leave his palaces, all the queens would look at Krishna with feminine gestures. Krishna would respond to their greetings with smiles, attracting their hearts so much that they would feel intense separation from Krishna. The shy, loving glances of the palace women, hinting at their agitation, simply implied, "Oh, how can we tolerate this torment of being separated from you, Krishna?" The idea here is that because Krishna was captured by their affection, Krishna smiled, and that smiling indicated, "My dear restless ladies, you are so overwhelmed by this little bit of separation. I am coming back later today just to enjoy with you." And then With his smile captivating their minds, Krishna got away only with difficulty, freeing himself from the bondage of the queen's loving glances. Then Krishna would go to the assembly house known as Sudharma. It may be remembered that the Sudharma assembly house was taken away from the heavenly planets and established in the city of Dwaraka. The specific significance of this assembly house was that anyone who entered it would become freed from the 6 kinds of material pangs, such as hunger, thirst, lamentation, illusion, old age, and even death. These are the whips of material existence, and as long as one remained in that assembly house of Sudharma, one would not be affected by these 6 material whips. Then Krishna would say goodbye in all the 16,108 palaces, and again Krishna would become one and enter the Sudharma assembly house in procession with other members of the Yadu dynasty. When Lord Krishna would exit separately from each of his many palaces, each individual form would be visible to the persons present on those particular palace grounds and to the neighboring residents, but not to others. Then, at the gateway path of the Sudharma assembly hall, all the forms of the Lord, 16,108, would merge into one single form. Thus Krishna would enter the hall. After entering the assembly house, Krishna used to sit on an exalted royal throne, and Krishna would be seen emanating glaring rays of transcendental effulgence. In the midst of all the great heroes of the Yadu dynasty, Krishna resembled the full moon in the sky, surrounded by multi-luminaries. In the assembly house were professional jokers, dancers, musicians, and ballet girls. And as soon as Krishna sat on his throne, they would begin their respective functions to please Krishna and put Krishna in a happy mood. First of all, the jokers would talk in such a way that Krishna and his associates would enjoy their humor, which would refresh the morning mood. The dramatic actors would then play their parts, and the dancing ballet girls would separately display their artistic movements. All these functions would be accompanied by the beating of mridanga drums and the sounds of the veena, flutes, and bells, followed by the sound of another kind of drum known as pakvaj. Along with these musical vibrations, the auspicious sound of the conch shell would also be added. The professional singers known as sutas and magadas would sing, and others would perform their dancing art. In this way, as devotees, they would offer respectful prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sometimes the learned brahmanas present in that assembly would chant Vedic hymns and explain them to the audience to the best of their knowledge. And sometimes some of them would recite old historical accounts of the activities of prominent kings. Krishna, accompanied by his associates, would be very much pleased to hear them. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.